All right.
Hey, welcome back to another Mind the Mic podcast. I'm your host, Shubz, here with the bro Siah Talks in the building. This is a bit of an interesting one because usually I know who the guest is or I know of them. I don't really know too much about the brother, but my sister Maddie, she said, give him a shot, and let's see how it goes. She said you're an interesting guy. She really enjoyed your conversation, but also looked into some of your content. And so for anybody, including myself, brother Siah, tell us about yourself, where you come from. Let's go way back, brother. Let's go. Tell us.
All right, way back. Well, originally from Nigeria, and I've lived in
Yoruba,
Australia for about...
Igbo. Which one are you?
Oh, none of those ones. None of those
I'm
ones.
a
minority in my country.
Oh, minority.
I'm what you would call a minority. Yeah. So, I'm an Edo guy.
Edo.
Spelled Edo. Yeah. So it's kind of like similar to how Japanese spell Edo as well, or they call it Edo. Yeah, but basically I'm an Edo. We're a minority in Nigeria. We're pretty much like the smaller group. So we are part of the South group, and Nigeria has like, what would I call it? Multicultural country, very, very different languages for different people, right? We're not as similar or as the same as people would think. We got about probably 150 languages to 250 languages, depending on where you're reading the information from. It's a lot. I can speak
are they similar though? Are they similar, or are there some languages you
when it comes to dialects, it's 350 dialects. So some are similar, but some are absolutely different. Some are totally different from each other that we don't even understand a word of what the other person is saying. And like in my state, with the state where I come from, like a village that's an hour away from my village is speaking a totally different language. I'm not talking about dialects, a totally different language from
so you can't
my
even communicate
language.
with them.
Can't communicate with them at all. Absolutely not. Zero. Absolutely zero. So it's a very, very multiculturally diverse country. Now we have similarities, obviously, because we live together. However, we can tell who's who, where you're from, based on accent and sometimes looks as well. Will also determine exactly where you're from. Be able to determine all of that. So that's where I come from originally. School there, lived there for the longest of times. Then I moved to UK and I stayed in the UK for about 2 years or thereabout. Went to the university there.
At what age?
Went back to Nigeria for about
19. What age? What age did you move to the UK?
No. I was later in my 20s when I went to the UK.
Okay.
20s. And then left the UK, spent about 2 years there, then came here. So, I've been here for about 10 years, live in Perth, WA, Western Australia, for those of you who don't know what WA stands for. And I've been having a ball small time. Currently, I do Uber. I also have a full-time job, but I probably might just keep that to myself. But I do Uber on the side. And that's how I kind of met your sister. She was one of the writers I had. And from time to time, I do try to have conversations on various things. It's part of the job. So when you're an Uber driver, you're more or less somebody people can confide in. You're more or less a priest. You're a psychiatrist. People confess things to you as a priest, because they know that when they confess stuff to you, they don't ever get out to anybody else, because that's the first and last time you meet them. So they spill their hearts out. You're also a psychologist, and maybe on a Friday night and a Saturday night, you're probably an entertainer, a DJ, or something like that. You're doing all of that. You're just throwing a bit of entertainment in there just to get the people going before they go out and all of that stuff. So that's me in a nutshell, basically. Someone who's really fun. And currently, besides my work and besides me doing Uber, I also run a YouTube channel as well.
Okay,
called Siah Talks.
Tell us about that.
Now,
Siah Talks.
Yeah.
What's the at, brother? What's your at?
So my niche. Oh, my niche.
No. The at. Like if someone wants to search you up on like YouTube or
if they search Siah Talks, it's just gonna pop up. If they search Siah Talks, it's gonna pop up. Directly. But on my Instagram is I am Siah99. So at Siah99. Yeah.
All right. What I might do, I might just carry on, continue your story, brother. I might at Siah99, brother, Instagram. All right, let's start there.
At I am Siah99. I am Siah99. One word.
Siah99.
99.
One
Yeah.
word. Oh, I'm
So on
typing this
Instagram, I
wrong.
pretty much just joke around, play around. I don't take anything too serious. I just, do some memes here and there. However, on YouTube is where I'm pretty much more serious. That's the Siah
Okay.
Talk channel. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where more
Serious
I
in
talk
what way?
about. Well, basically, I talk about stuffs that are happening in terms of entertainment, particularly Hollywood, and how
Okay.
Hollywood is trying to influence society rather than entertain society. They're more
Like that?
focused on
Is this
pushing
correct?
messaging,
Can you look at your
right?
at this down here? Is that correct? I am Siah Talks. Is that it?
Uh, no, no talks. Just I am Siah 99. That's
Oh, my bad, my bad. I'll change it. I'll change it. I
oh,
got you. I
but if
got
you
you. I
want
got
my
you.
handle, if it's my handle on YouTube, Siah Talks.
Oh,
So
okay.
at
Oh, yeah.
Siah
They can
Talks
just type in the top
287.
one and you'll get there. Just type in the top one and
Okay,
they'll
so
find it on YouTube. And this is the one to find you on. So if they want you on
this
YouTube,
is
they type in
Instagram, the
Siah
top.
Talks, and then Instagram.
That's
That's it.
right.
I am Siah 99.
Yeah,
All right, sweet.
yeah.
And you were saying about Hollywood, yeah, about how they what not
Yeah, so
entertain, but
basically entertainment. So before I started doing this, I had a channel previously, and this is something crazy that happens on YouTube. So previously, I had a channel that talks about straight politics, especially American politics, because America is like center of the world. Everybody's fixated on them. They've globalized the world pretty much.
Mhm.
Someone like me who's from Nigeria, talking the way I'm talking, it's American influence. My accent and so on and so forth, it has a lot with what I dress, how I talk. And so we see that
Yeah, look
whatever
what
is
I'm
happening in
wearing, brother.
America,
Fucking American man, American team, same.
yeah, exactly. So basically, whatever happens there influences the world, right? And I noticed that they pass certain type of messages, that those messages can affect people negatively, especially if you're ethnic, if you're not white. And the messages sounds really good. They sound like as if they are for you, but they're not really for you. I'll give you a typical example.
Okay.
Would be the
Yes.
Black Lives Matter movement, right? For
Yeah,
instance,
talk
now it
about it,
sounds good
baby.
on paper. They're trying to fight for black people and for black rights, and civil rights in America for black people especially. However, what they are actually doing is they are actually turning black people into the exact thing that black people have hated in the past. So they are turning black people into black supremacists. They are promoting
To the oppressor.
black racism against
Mhm.
other people and making it justified and say, yeah, we should be able to be racist against other people. Why? Because we suffered racism in the past. But there should be no justification for racism. Also, they define racism as a power structure between an oppressor and an oppressed. And so that the oppressed is incapable of calling, of being a racist. And that's a wrong premise.
You
That's a
can't. They
premise
can't.
that
The
sends
reverse
you
can't exist.
down.
Mm.
Exactly. That's a premise that sends you down a wrong path. It makes you think a certain way. You become a supremacist yourself. You start to call things out that you think they are in your best interest, but they are actually in your worst interest, right? So they started promoting things that are detrimental to black people, and a lot of black people fell for it. And not just a lot of black people,
Like what?
a lot
Can
of
you give examples on detrimental
all,
things that they've promoted?
okay, so one key thing would be the George Floyd incident, right? So they keyed on the George
Yes.
Floyd incident and they used it to push the idea that police in America were out hunting black people and killing black people. You probably might have seen or heard, or if you haven't heard, there was a text message, a tweet that was tweeted by LeBron James, the famous basketballer. He's a big advocate for Black Lives Matter, right? And he
Mm.
tweeted, "They are hunting us," right? And he posted a picture of a police officer and so on and so forth, saying that police officers are killing black people indiscriminately in America. This premise is absolutely false and it's detrimental to black people. And you'll ask me, how is it detrimental to black people? Because of the premises that they were pushing on that police brutality specifically targets black people, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually a lie. Police brutality is suffered by every race in America, whether it be black, white, Hispanic, or Asian. But they made it about black people, hence now calling for the defunding of police. When they called for the defunding of police, and this is something that I explained to your sister, it's supposed to be something good for the black community, right? When you defund the police, you say, "Oh, say we don't want police in black neighborhood because black people should be able to police themselves," and so on and so forth. What then happened was that a lot of police officers, because of the demonization of policing, right, due to the messaging of Black Lives Matter, A lot of them quit, that they're not going to take this. They're not going to be taking abuse from people whom they are trying to protect. Now, when police people resigned, they resigned in droves, especially in the liberal cities in America. And they resigned in droves. And this led to what? A rise in crime. So I was monitoring this. I was monitoring this a couple of years back, seriously. And I was trying to warn people through YouTube channel, right? To give messages that these things are happening. They are detrimental to the Black community. Because if you have no police in Black community, something's going to happen. Chaos. And when you have chaos, what are you going to have that comes with chaos? You're going to have a rise in crime. And statistically, the trends show it. You can Google it. Anybody, whatever I'm saying right now, you can Google 2020. You can Google when George Floyd's situation happened in April or May of 2020, and then Google the statistics and trends of rise in crime between that time till the end of the year. You will find out that between the May 2020, when this thing happened in Illinois, to the end of the year, crime, and three major crimes in particular, rose. Three major crimes in particular rose by 30%. 30% is insane. So we're talking about murder, arson, and armed robbery rose by 3% due to, and people will say, and this is the argument that people will make. They're going to tell you that correlation is not equal to causation. But you explain, how is it that at the very same time that George Floyd died, at the very same time the Black Lives Matter, comes to fruition, like comes to a world-renowned status, like everybody now knew Black Lives Matter. At that very same time, a whole drove of police officers retired or resigned. At that very same time, crime rose up. I mean, these are so many correlated things that you cannot tell me that these things are not the cause of the rising crime. You can't tell me that. Now, why do I say the Black Lives Matter thing is also detrimental? So it's detrimental, and you now find out that there are certain things they don't want people to mention, especially if you're Black. If you mention this, they'll say that you're a sellout, to your own people, that you're a sellout to your own community. You're tap dancing for the white man. When you mention statistics that people don't know, because they are truthful, they are hard to swallow. Right? So these were the kind of things that I was saying. So one of the key statistics would be this. First things first, when they say police indiscriminately kills Black people in America than white people, well, I'll tell you this. When you look at the numbers, white people die at the hands of police more than Black people, right? They die at the hands of police more than Black people. Funny enough, the number of police that die at the hands of the general public is equal to the same number of Black people that die at the hands of police. Have you ever checked that out before?
No, I've never really looked into those stats, brother. But so what you're saying too is that the narrative that's painted there from your perspective and also your research is that police are hunting Black people, like LeBron James tweeted in America, is completely false. You've researched this extensively. And is this just false in that instance, or is this throughout? Like, is this just around the George Floyd thing, or are we talking way back?
No, absolutely. No, historically, it's been happening. Now, I'll give you an instance where I say it's a false premise. Now, okay. I'm very sure. I'm 100% sure that you've never heard this name before, Tony Timpa. Have you ever heard of the name Tony Timpa?
Tony Timpa? No.
No, you've never heard of Tony Timpa. So 2 years before this George Floyd situation, Tony Timpa was a white guy who had schizophrenia. Tony Timpa hadn't had his medication, so I think he rang the cops that he was going to do something crazy, and the cops came to, arrest him or something of that nature. Now, Timpa was dragged out by police officers. These police officers, 4 of them are Hispanic, 1 of them is Black, and their supervisor, or what do they call them, superintendent or whatever, was white, right? He was observing the whole scenario. So they dragged him out. They try to arrest him so that he doesn't harm someone else, right? They pin him on the ground. And this brother is screaming, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. The police officers are laughing at him. They think he's faking it. They think that he's not serious about this. They knelt on him, right? The exact same way George Floyd was knelt on, and he died. Now, you don't hear about that. The reason why is because he's not the right corporate color. He's not the color that can be used to push a narrative. Tony Timpa was killed by police officers who were not white. They were Hispanic and black. They knelt on him and he died. So why wasn't there any much outrage about that person? Well, the movement that we are seeing today dehumanizes certain people, which I'm against the dehumanization of anybody. So it's dehumanizing white people as against everybody else, makes you have a certain opinion about white people as against everybody else. And funnily enough, inadvertently, it elevates the status of white people above everybody else. It's not because their status should be, it's because our mindset tells us that from the messaging that we are getting from the likes of BLM and the rest of them.
Who drives BLM? Have you done that research? Research on who funds it?
So first is first, I'll have you know that BLM, they claim that they are trained Marxists. The people that train them are not blacks. And this is something that black people don't know. So the head of BLM is Patrice Concoulas. Patrice Concoulas has a partner who's a co-founder, Alisa Garcia or Gaza or something, right? These people were trained by a Marxist, how would I put him now?
Explain Marxism for people that don't understand, brother.
Yeah, explain Marxism. So generally, in a nutshell, just so people that can understand, Marxism spans from a philosopher by the name of Karl Marx. I think he's a philosopher or something. Karl Marx had the ideology that the world was simply divided into a social binary system, which means that in a binary system, you only have two aspects that make up the social group, right? In the world. And those two aspects are governed by two things, an oppressed and an oppressor. So everybody falls into one of the two categories. Now, people who believe in this thing, this is where the roots of communism spans from. And the roots of communism and the ideology of Marxism is that the oppressors work to serve, the oppressed work to serve the oppressors. And that one day the oppressed shall rise up against the oppressor and take them down. Hence why you would hear a group like Black Lives Matter will say they are here to destabilize the government, to burn it down. You understand? So they are claiming that they are the oppressors and that that they are the oppressed and that the government is the oppressor. So the ideology of Marxism is simply divides the world into a social binary structure. However, what you're now seeing and what is being promoted, not just from the likes of the groups of Black Lives Matter, it's being promoted by the government. It's being promoted by legacy media. And when I say legacy media, I mean international medias like your CNNs, your MSNBCs, your ABCs, and so on and so forth, your BBCs and so on and so forth. All of these channels, they are promoting
Channel 9
all of these
here
things across the world. Channel 9 here too, obviously. Obviously, right? They promote it. You hear it on the radios. So all these people in conjunction with schools, universities, because they need this messaging to hit every single person. So that way it becomes true. If you say a lie long enough and anywhere that everybody turns to, the lie keeps beaming at you. You go to school, your lecturer tells you that lie. You listen to the radio, you hear the lie on the radio. You watch the television, you see the lie on your television. You check out social media and you get that same lie. That same lie, no matter who you are, if you're not paying attention, it will start to become truth. Right? To you. It will start to become truth. And then this is how people get radicalized. And this is how people fall for certain narrative. It's through those narrative that they get radicalized. So that ideology has been passed down and has been used by communists, because communists, they believe that there shouldn't be a position or a situation where there should be a higher ups and somebody at the bottom, that everybody should be equal.
Explain communism to anybody that doesn't understand that too.
So for communism generally, they believe that everybody should have an equality of outcome. That's the general idea of communism, that no matter what you do, there should be no poor people on the planet or in a country or wherever, right? There should be no poor people. Everybody should be the same. There should be no leadership. There should be no subject. Everybody should be the same. Everybody should experience the same outcome, right? And this is a dangerous game. And this is where you hear people who believe in that ideology mention things like equity rather than equality. So when they say equity, equity means that you and I, for instance, we could go and prepare for an exam, right?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, maybe let's say both of us are in the same school, we're in same high school, and we're about to write an exam. And you could spend days and nights studying, right? Researching, doing things to pass this exam. And then I will just show up. According to communism, you and I, regardless of the effort that you've put in, and I've not put in any effort whatsoever, we should both come out with the same result. That's the ideology of communism, right? Now, capitalism is the total opposite, which is the foundation by which most stable countries in the world were built upon, right? Now, the general idea of communism is not that somebody should put in a hard work, but everybody should work generally to advance the society, to get common goal and to get an equal reward, right? So what do I mean by equal reward? In real sense, you could be a carpenter or you could be somebody who's a street sweeper, right? And I could be the CEO of a company. Communism depicts that you as a street sweeper and I as a CEO of a company should earn the same amount of money. We should only earn the same amount of money based upon the responsibilities that we carry. So, for instance, if you had a son and I had a son, we should earn the same amount of money. If you had $10, 5 sons, and I had $10, 5 sons, and you were the CEO of a company, and I'm just a guy who cleans toilets and stuff, we should earn the same amount of money. This is what communism calls for. Now, is this translatable to reality? No. There's only one sect of animals. If you're comparing communism to the system by which animals live, there's only one sector of animals that actually mirrors what communism is, and those are ants. So you know, ants, they have soldier ants, they have worker ants. You know, they are the ants that protect the what do you call it, the colony and so on and so forth. However, the result is that they all feed together, they all eat together, right? They all just coexist together, right? And they have like equal results. So everybody works for the community, but then everybody has equal results. So the soldier ants may do nothing, but they will have the same amount of food as the worker ants. So basically, you want to translate that system into reality, is what communism somewhat calls for. Wants everybody to be equal. Now, on paper, it seems good, but does it seem fair? Because if everyone's going to have the same equal results, what would be your motivation to do anything? Think about it. If you're going to get the same result as I am, if we're going to write the same exam, and the only thing that would make us pass that exam is me showing up, what's your motivation for studying for that exam? What's my motivation for studying for that exam?
Yeah, there shouldn't be any, because
we'll pass it regardless.
Yeah, we're gonna get
we'll
there.
pass it regardless.
100%.
Yeah. So it doesn't translate into reality, right? Now, the powers that be, whether it be government or people who are involved with them, whether it be the globalist or whatever, all of these people, right? They know this. They know the truth that communism is impossible to achieve. Why? Because you have to have leadership. In any functioning society, you have to have leadership and you have to have hierarchy. So the leadership will span from the local government, which is the actual voice of the people, right? Your local government have more contact with you than anybody else, right? So they have to be a certain level up, and you have to decide that you're nominating them to be your voice, to be the person that will speak for you, the person that will look out for you. And how do you select them is by them telling you, hey, these are the things that we want to do. So if they tell you 10 things that they want to do, and 9 of them aligns with what you want, like they say, we're going to create jobs, we're going to create better schools, we're going to make sure that there are more teachers, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, right? All of these things that they're saying, you're listening. And you're like, hey, this aligns with what I want. I want better schools. I want better road. I want more security. I want protection. I want to be able to be free to go to the library at night to study, or to go to a nightclub, to party, to do all of these things. These would determine how I do what? Vote for my voice at the government who speaks on my behalf. And why is this? Is because in return, I'm going to pay what you call tax so that they can be able to effect all of this. Isn't that? That's the reason why we pay tax, right? So what's now happening is instead of them doing all of that, what we are now getting from certain factions of the government is instead of them telling you, these are the things that we're going to do that aligns with you, instead, they push narratives at you to make you think that what they want to do is aligning with what you want. So what are these narratives? Unprovable narratives. If they tell you that the reason why you can't make it in life is because of your color of your skin, you're going to quickly believe them, isn't it? Even though if it's not true. So they'll tell
so what
you.
you're saying is a lot of it, do you think, is to keep the separation, like to keep people believing in like you said, Marxism, and pushing that on to people, but to believe that like, for example, white either are superior or they think they are, and to create the illusion that so in saying that though, brother, are you of the belief that generational trauma does not exist? Like, are you of that? Like, do you think that doesn't exist? Like,
I believe that generational trauma does exist. I believe that generation trauma can have its influence and its place in society. However, I also believe that solutions exist to capitalize and solve generational trauma. And this is the reason, I'll tell you the reason why. Now, historically, the generational trauma that has been faced by ethnic groups, various ethnic groups across the world, whether it be the Aboriginal group in Australia, the Black Americans in America, the Caribbeans who suffered from the English people, and so on and so forth.
yeah,
Right? Do you know that white people also have suffered generational traumas? Have you ever heard of the Ottoman Empire? The Ottoman Empire enslaved the Slavic people, didn't they? Slavic people, generally, there's a lot of them in Europe, isn't it?
a lot of the British enslaved
However,
the Irish.
the British enslaved the Irish. Do you get what I mean? So why am I saying that generational trauma, it exists, but it should not hold any sway, and there is a solution to this? How is it that the Slavs, we're talking about people across Europe, Eastern Europe, they suffered at the hands of mobs. Mobs were not exactly white. They were brown people, right? They dominated Spain at one point, right? They're part of the Ottoman Empire at one point, right? The Turkish people. These people are not whites, but they enslave white people. Why aren't the white people suffering generational trauma from that history? Why are they suffering it? Why? Because they educate themselves that our past cannot determine our future, right? And we cannot hold these people responsible for what their ancestors did in the past. If we push this sort of messaging on a daily basis, wherever people go to, as children go to classrooms, they get these messages. They turn on the television, they get these messages. They watch a movie and they get these messages, right? Generational trauma will start to die, because the reality of it is that generational trauma only exists by reason of information. And when you center on certain information, those information will cajole people to think a certain way. And that is how you suppress them. Information is powerful, right? Now, I'm a Christian, and a lot of people don't have to believe in the Bible for you to actually test it out. But the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, right? Knowledge is something so powerful that you can manipulate people when you have it. And you can also elevate and raise people if you have knowledge of certain things. You can set people free. One of the key things that Bob Marley sang about in one of his most popular songs, when he was singing to especially black people, but not just black people, but it was a song that should resonate with everybody across the world, whether you're black, white, Hispanic. He said, we must emancipate ourselves from mental slavery.
Mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our
No
mind.
one else can free us. You know,
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
one else
brother.
can do it. Why is
Yeah.
he
None but
saying these
ourselves
things?
can free
Because
our minds. Yeah. Have no
minds,
fear for atomic
because
energy. That's it,
make
brother.
energy. Yeah,
Because
you
none
see,
of them
because
can stop the time. Yeah, brother.
bless you, man.
Correct.
Bless you. Preach it. Right? He knew he was a revolutionary, right? He knew
Definitely.
that what ties people down, what holds people down is information, right? Information into your head is what lives in your head, and that becomes your reality. So if we could
Yeah.
change the information going out, we could emancipate people from this slavery. So now I know where you were going when you said something about um generational trauma and how it might affect or might not affect people. And like I said, it's about information. So
Yeah.
I'll give you a typical example.
Hey, before
We
you do,
are, yeah,
I got like I listen to a lot of Gary V, who's I don't know if you know Gary Vaynerchuk, but
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of
Gary
his thing
Vaynerchuk.
is like, yeah, you might be black, you
Mm,
might be whatever, but if somebody
mm,
who looks like you and comes from where you've come from has done it, you can too.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like no
Oh
matter
boy,
the
I'm a,
obstacles, you know what I mean?
I'm a
Unless there's some
testament to
like
that.
unless you come from a place that nobody's ever done it before, then maybe you can say that. But you could also be the first
Exactly,
person. So now, well, I
exactly.
wasn't sort of getting on because I'm big on that, brother. I'm big on like I understand
Mm,
that you're a black man yourself. You spoke on America where a lot of
yeah,
your I guess your ancestors, cousins were taken to and even
cousins.
given
Yeah.
away by. But this is what people forget too. A lot of them were given away by kings from Africa. You know what I mean? Like, you know
Thank
what I
you,
mean?
thank you. You're right on
You
the
know what I
money.
mean? Like,
So
and
these are
other
the parts of the
places,
histories.
wherever people that are enslaved, like they didn't just go over
Yeah,
there and pick them up like cotton. Like they had to be
exactly,
given to them by somebody, right?
exactly,
There
exactly.
has to be
So
an exchange. Yeah.
there had to be an
Uh,
exchange. So people don't actually dig deep into the history of Africa and slavery and all of this, right? So there is a strategic mindset that is being pushed, like messaging that is being pushed, right? And that messaging
100%.
wants you to focus on something. It wants you to focus on a certain people, right? And the reason why I say this is this: you mentioned something about slavery in Africa, who sold slaves, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Before the white men stepped foot in Africa, who were the first people to come to Africa to pillage Africa for slavery, right? It was our Muslims brother from the Middle East. It's our Islamic brothers from the Middle East. They were the first to step into Africa, right? They came into Africa. They weren't buying slaves. They were pillaging Africa for slaves, took them over to the Middle East and used them for hard slave labor, right? And what they did to many of them, and this is the height of racism that people don't talk about. I'm sorry, I'm not holding the current Islamic people to anything. I'm talking about this is the past because everybody's ancestor were terrible in the past, did something bad in the past, right? So I'm just
Mm.
saying, I'm talking historically. They brought them there. The height of racism and what they did to those black people was they castrated the men to make sure that no infidel mixes with their people. Is that not a supremacist mentality? It's called eugenics, where you don't want people who are not part of your pure race to mix with you. This history is not something that is blown out to the public for some reason. So they want us to keep our eyes strictly firm on the white man, the bogey white man, right? They
Cool.
don't want us to focus on anybody else. So Arabs did that to Africans, but you would hardly ever see any African looking at Arabs as like quote
Oppressors
and unquote
or anything.
the enemy or the oppressors of
Mm.
Africans. They're still enslaving Africans till date in the Middle East. I'm talking about even the popular Middle East. I'm talking about Qatar. I'm talking about Dubai. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, where they're holding black people and putting them to work and taking their passports away from them and using them as slave labor. But no one's doing anything about it. No one's saying anything about it. Oh, no, we need to focus on the white man. They're the most racist people in the world. However, categorically, slavery was expedient in the world until white men from France, white men from England, and then white men from America said, no, we need to end slavery. So then they end slavery. They lost a lot of lives trying to end slavery. One story about a group of people in Africa, right next door neighbor to where I was born. It's a country right next to Nigeria. It's called Republic of Benin. They have a very historical tribe there called the Agoje tribe. The Agoje tribe were historical because they had female warriors, women warriors, right? Really strong women warriors. However, these women, do you know what they were known for doing? They were known for going into villages and the country where I was born, right? Not that the country where I was born, there were chiefs that were not guilty. They were guilty as well. But this was so powerful. They were coming into villages. They were pillaging all of those villages for slaves. They would come in the night, slaughter people, and grab as many slaves as they possibly could. And any slave that had a disability, they would kill for sacrifice to the gods, right? Then they would take the rest of the slaves. They would sell them to the white man. Agoje were responsible for the first slaves that landed in America, who came from my country. Yeah, the Agoje people. They were responsible for the first slaves that landed in America. The 1619, is this 1619? Yeah, 1619 or thereabout, where they started bringing slaves to America. They were responsible for that. They were stopped about 200 years later also by French colonies and English colonies. They told them to stop and they refused. They said they were not going to stop, and they had to fight a war. And they lost the war, and that's how slavery ended from the Agoje people. There were parts of Africa where people gave up. The first set of people that came to try to pillage, when white men first came to Africa to try to pillage Africa, was Portuguese. They came to Africa, they tried to pillage the villages for Africa. They landed in Senegal, and they tried to start gathering up slaves. Do you know what happened to them? They died. They died because they didn't know anywhere. There were diseases in Africa that they couldn't survive, and the Senegalese could. So the Senegalese pretty much more or less outsmarted them, killed a few of them, and many of them died of diseases. They went back, they educated the Spanish, Spanish educated the English. When they came back, instead of coming back as the enemy, they came back as diplomats, negotiated, and started slave trade. And people don't always think about it, that it's slave trade.
Yes.
Somebody was trading the slave. Who was that person that was trading the slave? Fellow black people. There are other histories they wouldn't tell a black man. Like in America, when the slaves were released, when slavery was abolished in America, guess who refused to set free those slaves? Guess who refused to set slaves free? Native Americans. They weren't whites, but they owned slaves. For a whole year or more, they refused to set their slaves free. Also, another history that is not told by people was that there were over 3,000 Americans, blacks, whom as soon as they were set free, owned slaves themselves. One of them, his own slave, fought for his freedom, and this guy fought to enslave this black man back again and actually put that black man to death. Anthony Johnson, read about him. So black people were doing horrific things to fellow black people in America when slavery was the thing. But these are histories they don't tell you occurred. Why? Because
how
they want the focus of anger.
How do people around you do like, say, your family, for instance, do they have similar opinions, or do you get a lot of pushback from your own community for some of these thoughts?
Not all my family have similar opinions as myself. I come from a very big family. I have brothers who would disagree with me. I also have friends who, to a very high extent, would disagree with me, but they don't have logical reasoning when we are actually having a civil discourse. They don't have logical reasoning to say what I'm saying is wrong. All they go ahead and say is they follow the line of you're a sellout kind of a thing, or you're a self-hating black man or something of that nature. That's what some of them say. Some of them come around eventually, but some others would say that I've been told by a fellow African that I'm a pure sellout, that I'm a coon, that I'm an Uncle Tom. And this is a young African that comes from Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was never colonized. My country was colonized by white people. If there was generational trauma, we should be suffering generational trauma in Africa because we faced the same thing as they did in England. People who rose up against the British Empire, they were enslaved and they were punished and treated as slaves in Africa, right? So we should also be having generational trauma. However, we don't. And here's a little statistics for you. And to prove that we don't. When you look at the wealth gap between America, between whites and blacks in America, for instance, they'll tell you that the wealth gap is dictating that there are oppressors and there is the oppressed, and that there's what you call a white privilege, and that white privilege is making white people do better than black people in America because there is systemic racism. They can't prove it to you. That's why they call it systemic racism, because there is no law that is actually racist against anybody in that country. So they use the word systemic because you can justify anything by a theoretical word, right? Now, here's the statistics. I looked into this. I started looking at people and their average earnings in America by reason of where they are from rather than their race. And this is what I found. The top 10 highest earners in America, when I'm talking about the countries where they are from, none of them are white. No, except for white Australians. White Australians are the fourth, or Australians are the fourth highest earners in America. They are the only white people in the top 10 group. Do you know who tops that group? Your Indians, your Burmese, your Taiwanese, your Japanese. They top those groups. And then white Australian is the only other person in that group. When you start moving to 18, 19, top 20s, guess what? African countries start to pop up, like Ghana, like Nigeria. And then you get Caribbean countries like Guyana. People from Jamaica are making it. And then when you go down the list to like 80 something, that's when you see black Americans. So if blackness, skin color, was something that should hinder you from making it, how is it that the highest and most educated people in America happens to be Nigerians? Do you know that in America, 65% of Nigerians above the age of 21 have a bachelor's degree? The next group of people that are, this was released by CNN. This is not me just quoting from some kind of an undisclosed. No.
Fake
CNN
news. Fake news.
Posted this before they became fake news. Before they became fake news, right? They posted this out there.
In my opinion, they've always been fake news, brother.
Right? Right? There was no reason for them to do this, right? They put this out there. I did my research. 65% of Nigerians have a bachelor's degree, higher than any other group. Do you know the next closest group to Nigeria is Asians, with 55% of them being with bachelor's degree. So the most educated group in America happens to be Nigerians. Nigerians, in terms of family earnings, outperform white Americans. And so do Ghanaians in America. And so do Caribbeans in America. Black people in America, no. Why is that? What is the difference between them? Because if systemic racism was what was holding Black Americans down because of the color of their skin, it should hold the Africans who are immigrants of the country and the Caribbeans who are immigrants of the country. It should hold them down double time. But it doesn't, does it? Do you want to know what the difference is? It is messaging. Messaging. When you give people the kind of message that gives them an excuse to not be accountable for their own shortcomings, then you are giving them an excuse to fail. And it's easier for people to buy into the excuse to fail. I know this because I've personally experienced it. See, when I was coming to Australia, I didn't have the mindset that Australia is a racist country. However, when I got to Australia, this information was being thrown in my face. Everyone was saying it. Australia is such a racist country. You can't make it in Australia. I bought into this thing for years. And
Oh, so
because
you
I
didn't.
bought into
So you hadn't adopted this philosophy yet that you have now
no,
today
I had
when you
this
first moved.
philosophy a little bit, but I bought into the other philosophy because I was coming from a culture that naturally buys into these philosophies. So my first 5 years here, I couldn't get a job. I'd apply for a job, I wouldn't get it. I was like, I have the qualification. I did an advanced diploma in oil and gas. I'm applying to oil and gas companies, and I'm not even getting an interview. Then I started to apply to mining companies, and I wasn't getting an interview. Then I tried to apply to agencies, and I wasn't getting an interview.
It's because
And
you're
guess
black.
what?
No, anyway, carry on.
Because I'm black. That's exactly why. So I bought into the narrative, and I was like, oh no, these people are going to want to take me because I'm black, because the country is racist. How foolish was I, right? Because of the narrative and the messaging, and people were telling me, man, this industry is racist. You're not going to be able to make it. You're not going to be able to do this, do that, do that. They're going to judge you based on the color of your skin. As soon as I bought into all those things, guess what? My life started to go deep downwards. My life started to deep downwards to the point whereby I became somebody who was owing money, couldn't pay my taxes, hardly found good jobs. I was like putting myself through menial jobs. A person with qualifications of advanced diploma and bachelor, washing dishes from restaurant to make money, because I thought that's the only thing I can do to survive in this country. How blind was I? My friends who were smarter than I was, like they were smarter in terms of we all went to the same school, we all had the same level of intelligence, but they were smarter. We're not buying into these whole racist things. They started working for top companies. And you know the top companies I'm talking about? The ones with the tall buildings at the center of Perth. We're talking Rio Tinto. We're talking Woodside, BHP, FMG. They were getting jobs with those people, but I was suffering from racism. These people are blacker than I am. I'm talking midnight black. I'm talking blackety black back to Africa, South Sudan type black. We're getting freaky jobs with those companies, but I couldn't because of racism. Right? So I had that mindset, and I was like, this isn't right. How? So after a while, I started doing readings. I check out books like Tom Sowell. I started watching more and more, listening to people like Jordan Peterson. He has a book as well, right? And I started to think about philosophy and all of these things and how they apply into real life. Because when I was in school, when I was in university, you have to study philosophy for a year. And I was like, these things started rushing into my head, and I started thinking to myself that, why am I not critically thinking about my situation? Why am I just buying into the situation? I have the mindset that I want to make it in life. Why should I buy into this narrative that I can't make it simply because I'm black? If that's the case, why don't I pack my bags and baggages and go and live amongst the people that are just black like me and see how that worked out? That didn't work out too well. That's why I left. If it was working out too well, I'd have stayed in my country, but it wasn't working out, so I left. So when I started thinking, I started to direct myself. I can't remember if it was Aristotle or someone said, one of these philosophers said something. He said, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So what happened was I was rolling with the people that had this mindset that I was probably smarter than, and they were the people that I was paying attention to. So I decided to change direction and start listening to people that are smarter than me, that have gone ahead of me, and question them. So you wouldn't believe that for the first 5-6 years of me living here, the reason why I was being rejected from all these jobs wasn't because of racism. It was because I had a stupid ass resume, and I didn't know it. And I didn't freaking know it because I gave my stupid ass resume to experts to fix the resume, and they gave it back to me. They fixed it and gave it back to me. But all they did was take what I put in there and rearranged it to make it look nice. Companies don't want to hire you because your resume looks nice. They want to hire you because they want to know that you are dedicated to this type of job, you have experience
Capable.
in this type of job, and you are capable of doing the job. They don't care how
Yeah.
beautiful your CV is. So I was listening to dumbass people who were telling me,
Yeah.
oh,
It's 'cause
you
you're
wash
black.
dishes in a hospital, chuck it in your CV. You worked for a disability company, right? Chuck that into your CV. It will let them know. You did what do you call this? You did volunteering work. Oh, that's gonna
Yeah.
be some high points for you in your CV. So a volunteer work is going to tell someone
Oil and gas.
who needs a work health and safety officer that you are good enough to be a work health and safety officer when all you've done is dishwashing. All you've done is dishwashing,
It's because you're black.
disability work. Yeah, no, it's not because of that, it's because of black, So I started to realize that I was dumb this whole time. And I was listening to a whole lot of dumb people, right? I was listening to a whole lot of people whom I was smarter than, but they were determining my mentality, my mindset, right? They were determining how I think. So, what was that thing that was now affecting me that I could easily relate? It is easy to just say it's because of racism. It's the easiest thing. The hardest thing to do is to actually admit that I'm the stupid one. Nobody wants to do that. Admit that they're stupid, because it now means that you have to be accountable for what happens to you. You now have to have accountability. Nobody wants that. So it's easy to take the easier route, and the easier route leads you to failure. Now imagine a whole race of people think that way. What do you think happens to that race of people? They fail. And when they fail, there are experts. Like I said, they could be globalists, they could be people from the government, aspects of the government. I'm not saying all of them, aspects of the government helping to push this message through the media, social media, through schools, through certain things, because they need those people to exist. Why do they need them to exist? Because they can use them to amass more power. Do you get what I mean? They can use them to amass more power. And it's easy. It becomes easier for them to gain power that way without absolutely doing anything. So if a party comes out and tells people who believe that they are not making it because of racism, if a party comes out and say, our policy is to end racism, our goal is to end racism, black people need to stop suffering in this world, and we're going to support them for whatever it is that they want, black people are going to vote them and say, hey, these people are saying the right words. They're going to end racism. They're going to stop this white supremacy. White supremacy is your biggest problem, your biggest existential threat. So look at us, man. We love ethnicity. We love to give people the voice. We love black people. They are part of our parties. So vote us, because we will tackle these issues. However, racism is not the problem. It's not the issue. The issue is I can't buy a loaf of bread. I don't have a roof over my head. The roads are bad. I can't walk home at night safely. So I have safety issues. I have job issues. I have feeding issues. I have shelter issues. However, the government convinces me that my biggest issue is the bogey white man who has nothing to do with me. Ask yourself a question. If you're a black person, you live in a black community, you work at a place, a job where only black people are, you go to school where black people are the teachers, are the superintendents, are everything. Black people are your mayors, your councillors. How are you experiencing racism? But still, when you ask people who have never met white people in their entire life why they are suffering when they are amongst people that look like them, they'll still tell you that it's because of racism. How is that even possible? It's because of
Are you
messaging.
saying? Are you saying that racism doesn't exist? Is there? Because
That's not
actually,
what I am saying.
no. Where does the term racism come from? Because how is it race when there's only one race, like the human race? I
So,
don't understand that.
yeah. So, generally, the idea, racism is an ideology. right?
Of course.
Racism is not real. It's an ideology. I always tell people that on this planet, right, if we were of different race, or they use the word species to separate things, if we were truly as different, there is no way we can procreate. An example would be lions and tigers, right? There would be no way we can continuously procreate with each other, that you will have mixed kids and mixed kids would be able to procreate. I'll give you an example. You know, lions and tigers, they are members of what? One family.
Yes.
They're members of a species called the cat family. They're the cat family, right?
Lion.
You do realize that lions and tigers, they can mate and have children.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of that? They're called ligers. Right. But can ligers have children?
I don't know. Can they not?
They can't.
Really? Oh, so
they can't procreate.
Wow.
That's it. Once you have a liger, that's why you don't have ligers running all over the place.
Oh. Well,
do you get it?
There might be a few more reasons then. But yeah, let's go.
maybe they don't know how to get their grooves on. No, they can't procreate. You can Google this. You can find out for yourself. Ligers cannot procreate.
I just learned something right now, brother.
Yeah. So as soon as they have a kid, you have liger. Ligers cannot have a kid. But you got people who are like, oh, where are you from? Oh, my mom's Taiwanese and my dad's Samoan and his granddad is black, and which means we're all one. But in the 1600s, some geniuses out there, white people, decided that they were going to start calling themselves the superior race. Why? Because they faced necessity more than every other race. And so necessity led to them advancing in technology probably quicker than everybody else, right? The places in the world where they faced the most necessities were the places in the world where technology developed quicker. It's not because they are smarter than everybody else. It's because the necessity was higher. How do I know this? When you look at the places in the world where technology advanced pretty quickly, you take, for instance, Japan. What do they have? They have a lot of natural disaster shit. They got snow, they got rain, monsoon, and all those sort of stuff. So the human mind has to work extra hard to survive. You look at America, they got volcanoes, they got earthquakes, they got cold, right? They got all this other stuff. You look at Europe as well, it's the same thing. When you come to Africa, I lived in Africa for nearly 30 years of my life.
Yeah.
No damn earthquake. No, nothing. There was nothing that we needed to like crack our brains to solve, right? So we didn't have problems that needed super inventions to solve. But all these other places, they did. And that's what made them advance. Now, as a reason of them being advanced, because of these necessities, they decided to call themselves the superior race. And then they decided to start dividing people into various races, right? And then because they were the superior race, they had a mindset that they need to keep themselves pure. They are not the first to think like this. I told you that the Arabs thought like this as well. They had the same mindset. They had the same thought process. We cannot have ourselves mixed with infidels, because that's what they referred to non-Arabs as. Not only black people, but white people as well. Yeah, they refer to everybody that is non-Arabs as infidels. Now, I'm not talking about today. I'm talking historically. People need to understand that I don't hold anybody today responsible for these problems. I hold the people who have died responsible for that problem. And because of that, I ain't mad at you. I ain't mad at a white man. I ain't mad at a black man. I am mad at a Samoan. I ain't mad at a Maori. I ain't mad at nobody, right?
Up the Samoans, up the Maoris. Let's go.
Right. Let's go, you know? So basically, I don't have that mindset. And because of that, that's how I set myself free. So I judge everybody by their individual action. So does racism exist is the question you ask me. because of the system that was created by these white supremacists, this ideology that has seeped and sapped into everybody's minds, it has become an objective truth that we have been divided into different races, right? Into different races. We are one species, but we are different race. And so when you judge someone simply based on the color of their skin and not their actions, you become somebody who looks at people from the perspective of race. And that's how racism comes into play. However, Marxist and communist ideologists have tried to redefine it so that they can use it to push their agenda to racism being a power structure, that only the oppressors have the capacity and the capability to be racist, and everybody else does not. So if everybody else does not, you can have a black man call a white man cracker, which is a racial slur, and nobody will say anything about it. However, if a white man says the N-word, oh, it's the end of the world. You can have a black man say white people, they smell. But if a white man says black people love watermelon, oh, it's the end of the world. Do you get what I mean? So this thing, it's a mindset battle. It's a mindset war. It's like spiritual warfare. I'll put it that way, right? That you want to weaken people, you pass a message that makes them the weaker party. And that
100%.
suppresses them. It suppresses them.
When you think a certain way, behind them all, right? Behind them all, behind Black Lives Matter, behind all of it, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that, brother. I definitely believe that. When it comes to the whole thing, it's obviously a game, and you're right. Like people that believe legacy media lies to you and pushes agendas on you, like that's another one. You know what I mean? What is permeating throughout all of those all of those mediums is that narrative
outlets.
is throughout, and all of anybody that's of a minority group like yourself, myself, or an indigenous culture. Obviously we can't take back what was done to our people, but again, you can't hold the people who live today accountable for their maybe their ancestors' actions or stuff like that. It's like I said about Gary Vee earlier. If someone that looks like you and comes from where you come from has made it, so you know what I mean, that means you can too. You know what I mean? And that's that messaging, shift that paradigm, and I think a lot more things would change. Hey brother, I got a couple of questions before we get out of here. Did you want to finish that point, or you good?
Oh yeah, no, good. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, this doesn't have to be the last time we sit down either, brother. I just want to ask you a couple of questions. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what do you choose and why?
If I'm gonna eat one meal for the rest of my life and why, that would be beans and bread.
Beans and bread. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy. So I'll describe the closest thing you can think of. It's black-eyed beans. You know black-eyed beans?
Yeah, black-eyed beans.
So we have various versions of that beans. And this thing, the way we cook it, is the most tastiest thing I've ever had. I never get tired of it. I could eat it every single day. And you give me that beans with brioche bread and this thing called plantain. It's like a it's like a banana, but it's in a banana family, but it's bigger. Plantain.
Big.
You give me those three, I will live till I'm 125.
Let's go. I like that, my brother.
I grew up on that, so I love it. Yeah.
Okay. What would, and is there like a name for it in your culture or anything? You got a
we call it ewa going. We call it ewa going. Ewa going.
Let's go, brother. Get a bit of that in your life. I might have to try it sometime.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we have to link up. Do you make it over here, or maybe I'll link up. We'll link up.
Yeah, I make it. I make it. I can make it
invite us over for some of that, brother. Some of that. I'll be keen.
Absolutely. For shizzle. For
shizzle, brother. If you could have one superpower, which one do you choose and why? Maybe even make one up. Create one if you have one on the tip of your tongue or your mind that you could.
I'd say the power of persuasion.
Ooh, okay. Persuading it. Why would you want that power?
If I could persuade people to understand that the problem that they're facing is not because of what they're being told, then they can solve their own problems themselves. And
Not
if I
because
could
of the
persuade
color of your skin,
people,
anyway.
not the color of their skin, yeah, and if I could persuade people to do the right thing, then we'll get a lot of people doing the right thing. I don't need
Mm.
to be Superman. Superman can't persuade people, so he always has to fight. I'm one of the laziest people on the planet. I want to be lazy, but I want to do something easy, right? So if I had the power of persuasion, I don't need the power of strength. As soon as Superman pops up and tries to fight me, I'll just convince him to fight himself. I'll persuade him to fight himself. So the power of persuasion, I think, is the most powerful thing. The person who said the pen is mightier than the sword knew what they were saying, because they knew true power lies in knowledge and wisdom, and not in the sword, which is not in physical attributes or abilities. So I don't want to run
Mm.
fast. I don't want to be flash. I don't want to fly. I don't want to do any of those things. I just want the power of persuasion.
I'm with you on the power. The pen is mightier than the sword, and true powers and knowledge, but also
Mm,
the application of it and how you use it too. I think that's key, right?
absolutely.
Because otherwise, a lot of
Mm,
people have knowledge and understanding, but if you don't apply it to your life or to the way you live your life, and I've been someone that's been that way
yes.
too. I've understood a lot of things and never gone for it or never applied it. So I'm with you, brother.
Hmm.
I love that. Give me
Absolutely.
visualization. 10 years from now, what does life look like for Siah Talks?
Um, 10 years from now. Well, I do have. I don't want to be a podcaster, so I will most likely be running a podcast 10 years from now, possibly at the
Yeah.
level of Joe Rogan or maybe higher, right?
Yeah,
Because
well,
he's the
if if
biggest
you
in
if you get to that level in
the
10 years, brother, you'll be there with me because my dream is to build the biggest podcast in the world, brother.
biggest
And
princess in the world. So yeah.
I'm daily applying myself to that and daily depositing. So
Mm,
yeah, I look forward to seeing you being a
yeah.
podcaster. What else happens in your life? Like, do you have
Fantastic.
children? You have
Fantastic.
grandchildren? What's the go there?
So that aspect of my life, um, I learned from someone to actually try to like limit those sort of information,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
What? No,
That
no, no stress,
yeah,
no stress, no stress.
yeah, just to keep it solo a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah, I do have a kid, but that's as
yeah.
far as I'll go. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So,
do have a kid. Yeah,
obviously, the kid will be older
yeah, and
and
I want the
whatever.
best for
And
him. He's my joy, my soul, my life, right? And
mm, beautiful,
yeah, everything I do, I live for him, more or less. I
sweet
have
brother.
families, like I've mentioned before, brothers, sisters,
Yeah,
but
of
they're not
course.
in the country. Yeah, it's just me
Yeah, yeah.
here.
But you'll
They're
still
all
be
over
in
the world.
Australia, you think, or you don't know?
Um, I've got to tell you something that's funny, but a lot of people might not believe this. But I think living in Perth, given the experience that I've been to Dubai, spent a couple of days there. My brother lives there. I talked to him about his experience over there. I lived in London for 2.5 years. I lived in Africa for most of my life. I've been to other parts of Africa here and there. Very, very similar living and all that. And believe it or not, and even Joe Rogan was thrilled by this. But I think, and I shouldn't be saying this on an open podcast, that I'm actually living in the best place, in the best city of the best state of the best country in the world. Now, that does not mean that it is perfect, but given what I have seen as compared to others, and the reason why I say that is because we experience some level of freedom that we don't experience elsewhere. We experience a
Mm.
level of tranquility that we don't experience elsewhere. There's a high level of middle class. So you are not really getting people hate you specifically because of your race, because everyone's doing well, and anybody who wants to do well can do well, pretty much. So, and things function properly. We've got electricity, we've got non-stop internet as we're doing this podcast. You have access to become whatever it is you want to become in life if you live here. Practically, what the American dream is all about, right? What they envisage that they want to be
What they
is
speak
what
on, yeah.
Perth Perth is at the moment. Now, whether it will remain like that in the next 30 years when it becomes more diverse, because it is becoming more and more diverse, when it becomes more diverse, when more people come in with different ideas and maybe woke ideas start to dominate, I don't know. But as it were right now, as it
Yeah,
is right now,
this is
it's
where
not
you'll be.
integrated, but this is where I will be. because it's the best place to be.
Hey, and I just want to second that too. I've traveled quite a bit, brother. I've been to nearly 50 countries and just traveling.
Wow.
And I've lived here for quite a while, and I think Australia in general, for like all the opportunities that we're afforded, if you're willing to go and get it, you know what I mean. There's not many countries you can live in and have these kind of opportunities, even without education, even with minimal education. The money you're able to attain here. And obviously now in spaces like this, you can and on the internet, there's the possibilities are endless. But if you're talking about pure safety and all of that kind of stuff, and all the things that us as humans innately desire, I guess, just to be safe, have our kids raised in a place where they are safe, and plenty of food, all that stuff. I would say that Australia in general, but Perth too, is a beautiful place to be. Thank you, my brother. I just want to say time's the most valuable commodity we have as human beings.
Absolutely.
The one thing you can never get back. You can always get back money. You can always get back things. But time spent is time lost. So thank you for sharing your time with me and anybody that listens to this for years to come. I appreciate you, brother. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we sit down, not only on here, but in the flesh, brother. And I look forward to seeing you have a big podcast right alongside ours as we keep conquering the world, my brother. Big love, my brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
And hey, shout out to anybody that's listening. You never know where a connection might go. My sister met the bro in an Uber ride last week, and here we are sitting on the podcast. And as I said, I plan on building the biggest podcast in the world. It's my mindset. We launched in January, baby, and we're 170 episodes deep. So. And we ain't stopping. So thank you, my brother. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching this full episode of Mind the Mic. It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to create these episodes. So to know that you've watched and listened to the entire thing means the world to myself and all our hosts. If you could, before you leave, please hit the subscribe button and share this episode out to as many people as possible. It would help us so much. Thank you again to everybody that's still here, still watching. Thank you for all your comments, all your shares, all the DMs. Appreciate you all. Make sure you follow us on every platform. Have an awesome morning. Have an awesome night, depending on where you are in the world. Mind the mic out.
Oi, have you hit the link in bio yet?
Watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all streaming platforms.